Hi, this is Amanda Dillon, and welcome to the Mental Society. Today, I am joined by Dylan Newcomb. Dylan is a world-renowned expert in embodiment and has dedicated over 2 decades to helping individuals transform unhealthy stress and live a more fulfilling life. He studied dance performance and music composition at the Juilliard School and then continued with dance in the Netherlands. And you received numerous awards for both choreography and composing. But you found your joy in working with people in connecting with their mind and their body and creating awareness around that through the in developing the UZAZU. I'm going to get that right one of these days. UZAZU. There we go. UZAZU Embodied Intelligence program, which is a comprehensive personal growth modality. So thank you for being here. Those are a lot of words that, UZAZU. Tell me a little bit more about how you got to this place, because I know you did research before you created this program, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you get to here?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for having me. It's nice to have this opportunity to talk and
Oh,
to share about this with people.
so excited.
So how did I develop this?
You started with dance. So what
Yeah.
brought you
Yeah.
from dance? And I
Yeah.
think dance is a way to connect with your body, but from that connecting with your body to connecting it with your mind and wellness, like that
Yeah.
holistic approach.
Yeah.
So how'd you get there?
Yeah. So I think another piece that hasn't been named that was really a significant factor in that
Mm-hmm.
shift was meditation. I At about 12 years old, I was getting bullied at school, and my mom sent me to karate class. Or I asked to be sent to karate class, but the karate teacher was actually, I think, more interested in meditation than karate because it was like almost half meditation, and I ended up liking the meditation more than the karate, and kind of fell in love with it, and then got really interested in it was a Japanese form. And then I just got interested in Japan and started studying Japanese and Japanese architecture and Japanese meditation and Zen. So from 12 to 18, I was just all about it. And I just found myself meditating a lot and reading about, like stories about enlightenment and just like really drawn to this
Yeah.
notion of enlightenment. And it was kind of weird because I was like 13 or 14 and that's what I was into. And my mom was a dancer, so I grew up with she was a folk dancer of Western folk dance and West African and Caribbean folk dance. So I
Wow.
grew up with both of those forms all the time. So there was dance. I was a childhood singer and performer, so I was all about voice, and I loved singing in public and in private and in nature. So you got meditation, singing, dance, and those were kind of the three ingredients that I just kept juggling. Um, and people kept saying you have to choose. Like, okay, I went to performing arts high school. I had to choose. Well, I ended up doing both, and then I got into Juilliard as a dancer, and they said you have to choose. But then they heard my music and invited me into the music department, so I ended up doing a double major at Juilliard in music composition and dance. Then I got a
Wow.
job in a dance company, first in the American Ballet Theater in New York City. Quit after a week, going, ballet really, it was great to study, but it really isn't my thing. Got a job with a company in the Netherlands, which was actually my favorite dance company, called the Netherlands Dance Theater, which was sort of a mix of modern and ballet. Yuri
Hmm.
Killian was the lead choreographer, and it moved me, and so I felt really blessed to be able to be in that company. After a few years, I started composing for choreographers there, and then I was back into my double life of music and dance, and the meditation just kept going on. At this
Right.
point, I gravitated more towards Buddhist insight meditation, known as Vipassana, and from Southeast Asia, and I was sitting a lot of retreats when I could, when I wasn't dancing and composing. By the time I hit 28, I had reached a kind of a crisis point where I was in my journey of meditating was like, okay, am I going to quit and go to a monastery and like leave all the attachments
Mhm.
of the sensual and materialist life, right? Because
Right.
a lot of many schools of Buddhism is like detach, non-attachment,
Right.
just notice it and let it pass. Whereas art is like feel it and respond to it.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'm feeling it. Do I respond? And that would turn into art, or do I just let it pass and then reach my goal of enlightenment? And at 28, that felt like it totally screwed up my sex life. I like at this point, I was like increasingly almost unable to have sex because it just felt like that's just
Interesting.
attachment to pleasure, and that's gotta take me further away from where Buddhism seemed to be inviting me, at least how I was receiving it.
Interesting.
So, there was like the body and sensualism in its various forms. And then there was like pure awareness
Mhm.
on the other hand, and it I just couldn't handle it anymore. um, and at the same time, I was also noticing, Amanda, that, okay, while my dance career and my music career were going fabulous, as you
Mhm.
noted, I was winning awards. I was relatively quite well known in Holland at that time. This was about 10 years into my time in Holland. So well, no, 8 years. I'm 28 at this point. And at that point. And so, I mean, it was all going well and I loved it. I loved the dance and the music, but it was not carrying into the rest of my life. It wasn't
Right.
like it wasn't like my ability to move and to feel just felt like, oh, and my relationships are this way and my finances are this way and my relationship to organization and time is no. It was like a bubble of paradise. And then the rest
And
of my
then,
life, which wasn't terrible. I wasn't a mess,
mhm.
but I was just like, if this is going to keep growing, I want it to transform more different areas of my
Right.
life. I want it to carry over and compounded by, and what about pure being? What about awareness? What about enlightenment? What about almost this sort of spiritual sense of where I should be going?
That word should.
Yeah.
It's
and
not my
and a
favorite
part of
word.
me really was drawn towards
Right.
this sense of greater unity and equanimity and peace and love uninterruptedly. So that point was the at that sort of crisis point was the seed that sparked what
Right.
over the next 20 years has become this modality, UZAZU Embodied Intelligence.
And so, like, when I think of embodiment, I think of like being connected fully, like your mind, your body, and the environment around you. Like you are one being, not a mind and a body. Like the two work together, and the external world is informing how they show up as well. So that's
Mm-hmm.
my understanding, kind of how I think of it. But I would love for you to explain more about what
What I mean when I
embodied
say
in,
body,
yeah.
yeah, and then happy to lay that out to in the way I hold it, and then to circle back on like, okay, well, what did I do at that crisis point, and
Oh
how
yeah,
did I
yeah. Sorry,
start to
yeah.
become Uzazu? Um, you know, a lot of people are aware of Descartes and the mind-body split, and
Mm-hmm.
Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am," which was sort of this culminating, crystallizing, milestone of a certain trend in a way out of the body. Of course, we're always in the body, but out of the body
Right.
and into the mind, and locating our sense of self here. That the body is a kind of a brain taxi that just carries us around so we can think here and we can think there.
Right.
Um, and then and scientific objectivism, science happens in the mind, and then we look objectively at the body as if it's not us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is and then the sort of classic religion spirituality of Buddha, Muhammad, Christ, all of these ones are also all of a time period, all around 500 BC, right? Which also reinforce further this notion of spirit versus the flesh, right?
Right.
And which is also a kind of
And
as opposed to the more older forms of spirituality, which were more animistic, which were more naturalistic, of which we were a part of the world, and the natural world,
right.
we were an extension of it.
And
So that it's not just a car, it's waves of human evolution, technology, the printing press, where we, instead of signing and gesticulating, we are now writing and reading. Like, there's so many things that drew us out of our body and into our mind.
And like, that's, you know, you talked about that difference of like your spirituality and your mind are kind of part of your body, but they're also separate. Like, that's how we've often viewed it, right? It's like,
yeah, it's complicated. Yeah.
And so when you were talking about like this dance and movement and feeling connected there, but then not necessarily feeling that same kind of satisfaction or contentment when it came to the other parts of your life, is that how UZAZU kind of came to be?
Yeah. I needed to find my own solution, because just dancing and doing what I'd learned about how one does, I'm a dancer, I'm a choreographer, I'm an artist, was not taking me fully where I wanted to be,
Right.
nor was meditating as I'd received it. So I was like, I gotta play shop this a little bit for myself. So I quit everything. I quit meditating. I quit calling myself a Buddhist. I quit my dance company, and I got some money, fortunately, because I had been quite successful in what I'd been doing. I got several grants from the Dutch government to just do some research. So I started a laboratory called the Danslab, together with 4 other choreographers that each were also at a point in their careers where they wanted to do their own research and not need to, I mean, they were on very different journeys than me, but we had in common that we didn't want to just keep having to make shows for people to watch. We wanted the space to do research that didn't have to just quickly turn into a product.
Right.
And thankfully we were in Holland, where at that time they were supporting those types of things, which is a very rare thing in the world.
Right.
And so yeah, we had this studio, we had grant money, and I got interns, like generally at a stretch 5 interns at a for a period of several months. And we would, from the local dance university, which was one of the best in the world, and I just researched, and I thought, okay, well, I love movement, I love sound, I'm into consciousness. Where does that all come together? And I went back to the voice, where I started as a kid, because when we make vowel sounds and consonants, wow, 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 it's a dance of the mouth. It's a little micro dance. And it sparks awareness, doesn't it? Like, we all have this natural, music is such a love and sound is such a love. It just sparks awareness. So I thought, why don't I have people make vowels and consonants and see how that wants to move, and see how it affects our awareness? Meaning, how does it affect our consciousness, our state? How does it, and in more specifics, what kind of thoughts, what kind of emotions, what kind of feelings, how do we feel when we make certain sounds?
And I'm thinking, like, when you
the
cry,
best sort of working question I could come up with, just as a starting point to see where it led me, because at least it was an intersection point of my interests. And so I had people for the following 2 years, hundreds of people come into the studio and just make all the different vowel sounds and consonants under the sun. Fortunately, it was Europe, and we had lots of different languages, lots of different cultures and ages and genders. I didn't let myself see any of the existing research on it, or the healing sounds of qigong, or Rudolf Steiner has worked with me with vowel sounds. I was like, no. I'm doing grounded research into what naturally happens cross-culturally when people do this. And yeah, we discovered very clear patterns to give of how, when people make certain vowel sounds, how the body tends to move, and how that tends to make people feel, and how then different people react to that provocation, so to speak. To give you an example, if I have people come into a room from all walks of life and say, go, ooh, ooh, just make that sound, ooh. Ooh, the body starts to,
yeah, like as you're saying, like
yeah.
I'm kind
Ooh.
of like,
Ooh.
but not like in a closed off way necessarily, like in a like relaxed in on
Right,
myself.
you start folding in on yourself. It's kind of, it can be softening, cozy. Now, different people will have different experiences. Some people will feel in that enfolding, feel trapped, or feel like, ooh, this is causing me to feel
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable feelings and I want to get out of there. Right. Other people are like, oh, this is very soothing. This is very connecting and restful and connects me back to myself. So you have the range of reactions, but the
Right.
pattern is the same. Take, on the other hand, a very different vowel. Ah, ah, ah. The mouth goes out, right? It goes, the
Mm-hmm.
tongue goes forward, the jaw opens, the lips widen.
Right.
Ah, and our whole body, if we let ourselves go with that, our whole body
Mm-hmm.
starts to expand. Our attention, our senses start to turn outward. We start to become extroverted and gregarious.
And
And that might be comfortable, and that might be very uncomfortable, right?
well, and I imagine too that people will respond very differently depending on their experience, their culture, right? With how they,
Personality, culture,
right?
gender,
Like when they walk into a
trauma
room,
history. Yeah.
all of those things,
Right.
because like for one person, because like for me, part of that like sound, like I wonder if I would walk into a room where somebody was making that noise and be like, oh my gosh, are they okay? Like, that like almost a
Yeah.
scream like this. I know that's not the
Right. It can be,
exact,
yeah. It can have so many different tones, right? It can be or it can be
but that's, yeah, the tones. And, you talked about too how we've moved like with the printing press and, we moved away from storytelling in the same way, probably using our hands
in an
and
embodied,
using our,
embodied way. Yeah.
and I think I hadn't thought of this before, but as you said that, like, I think like text messaging, for example,
Mm.
when we communicate that way, there's so much nuance in the nonverbal.
Right. All those qualities that we were
And
just
so,
noticing.
yeah. And so, like, and I mean, your tone of voice, right? The look
Yeah.
on your face, how you're holding your body,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because all of those things inform the person you're talking to about your mood, whether you're joking or you're serious or there's, a hint of
Right.
sarcasm, which can't be gotten the same way through a sentence on a screen.
Right. Right.
So, and
If you
and
look, if you look at how much of our communication has transferred into these, like my daughter is 12 and
okay,
she goes to a Waldorf school. And so we just last week, we had a whole parent meeting about technology and group chat,
mm-hmm.
because group chat happens, and then particularly the girls at this age, they all get on the group chat, and then she said this and he said that, and before you know it,
They're all right. Yeah.
anxiety is, reigning. And part of that is because of the medium, where they don't have each other's body language to give those clues that nurture secure attachment and coherence between people, right? So it's like, oh, what does she mean by that? I don't know. Well, did you, and then so these negative feedback loops just kick in, the anxiety
Yeah.
shoots up, because we don't
And
have these embodied signals and clues and feedback loops to keep us both adjusting, all those micro adjustments to keep us regulated.
mm-hmm.
Ugh. And no wonder, anxiety and suicidal ideation has gone up 40% in that demographic of girls her
And yeah,
age.
I was say like girls like that, a 10 to 16-year-old girls, the suicide ideation is, I mean, it's amazing how much higher it is for them than it is for their male counterparts. Like it
Yeah.
bothers me.
Yeah.
Like as a mom of a girl as well, and mine's a little older than yours. She's 15, but I still like I
Well, then she's even
worry.
more deep into it. Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and and there's so much like of that snarkiness and all of that that goes on um behind the scenes. And I think that at least with my kids and my friends' kids, what I've noticed is how the more attached they are to their phone, the more that they like, leave the space they're in. Like maybe not
Yeah.
like not physically, but like they withdraw.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so like when I think about withdrawing, like, I mean, if you're watching this on YouTube, you saw me like pull back away from the screen a little bit. And so when I do that, I feel like I'm closing myself off to the space that I'm in when I have this pullback. So do those sorts of like feeling disconnected from the world around you and connected to the screen, or only connected in your mind and not to your whole being, how does that impact our mental health and well-being?
Majorly, majorly. So when we're interacting with technology, or let's say a screen in whatever format, it is a very mind-based thing. We are looking at symbols and signs that we are interpreting, right? We can't do anything but skip, pause, scroll, comment, right? Here in my room, I can grab, I can move, I can touch, I can smile and smile that. My whole body is invited. I experience my whole body as being with, as interbeing, as relating. I've got so much more agency as to how I'm making difference, as to how I want to be in the space, as opposed to this fundamentally more disempowered stance of there's reality, or some impression of it that's been served up to us.
Well, it's like a 2D version of reality in a 3D world. And some like, does that, right? Because it's a flat screen, but our bodies take up space. And I know in some of like my somatic centering practices, like we talk about, taking length and width and depth, like, filling up all of that space and noticing where you're maybe feeling something wonky. That's a very technical word right there, wonky. But like you might be noticing something in your stomach, and you may not even know exactly like what's happening there, but then you can be curious. So is that kind of the same idea of like,
you were talking about, and you made that gesture of like if we don't feel safe and connected in the world and we retreat, but we retreat with our phone, what are we retreating into? We're retreating into, and I'm demonstrating here on the video, we're retreating into this sort of dissociated, checked out, not grounded and landed in my body interaction. So I'm isolated from the world and I'm disconnected from myself. So it's just all about the phone,
Yes.
And as opposed to if I am in my room and I'm doing things, I'm like, I'm gonna go onto the couch and I'm gonna take a book with me, right? And all the clues are keeping me in the concrete, the concreteness of the objects, the concreteness of my body, the texture in the couch. So I'm going in is a being with, it's a grounding and reconnecting with myself. Not only is that integrative, restful, but it's also cultivates self-awareness. Oh, how am I feeling? Oh, I have anxiety here. Oh, I have this. Oh, I have that. What are my needs? If I take those same 10 minutes on the couch scrolling, I come out of it not knowing much of anything more about how I'm doing, or having really rejuvenated in any way.
And I would argue that it potentially could make you feel more disconnected or more anxious, because social media is not always a fun place to be.
And it's endless. You're never fully up to date. You're never fully satisfied. So it's empty calories. And I want to at this point just put a disclaimer that I'm as guilty as the next person of all of this. Like it is so hard to escape. I have a,
but and it's
of how much I'm hurting myself.
It's funny, Dylan and I met on an app called FocusMate, actually, where you co-work with people. It's a way for me, it's a way to be accountable, but also have some human interaction during the day as someone that works a lot of alone from home.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I also have noticed that, when you are, not you particularly, but when we connect with people, our body language can impact how we connect, right? Like, because if I show up and I've got my arms crossed and I'm, head down and I'm grumpy,
Yeah.
like that's going to be felt by the person you're interacting with.
Yes.
And so, like, that also, like, I think community and relationship is key to our like mental health.
Yeah.
And like in that, I know I've talked to people like trauma that, when you've experienced trauma or when you're fearful, you show that in your body. And that predators, historically speaking, can read that and know that you might be an easier target. So when you are in this place of embodied movement and you're using your mind and your body, how does that change how you physically show up in response to other people?
Yeah, great question. Um, there's kind of we could there's so many ways I could answer that question. So here's how I'll answer it right now today. We could look at it from two directions, from self to other, from
Mm-hmm.
my experience and felt sense of me in the moment to you, and of from other to self. And so I'll meaning from what I'm sensing and feeling in you and
Right.
how that impacts me.
Right.
People that are more other oriented
Mm-hmm.
tend to start with the other, and then they're sort of naturally going, oh, how can I adapt to this other person's energy, moods, perspectives, needs,
Right.
right? Um, and so they're constantly in a kind of a realignment, reattunement, adapting space. And the challenge for people that tend to be more other focused is to keep checking in with where they're at and what their needs are,
Right.
what their feelings are, and not continually just be trying to adjust and adapt, right? Or even
Right.
just like recognize like where they are in that dyad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So embodiment in that equation of the more other focused folk. And it does. I don't like to jump to gender stereotypes, but I have
But
developed spent 15 years developing a validated assessment of these states and have
mm-hmm.
analyzed the results of over 1,000 people. And I can tell you with some with some data here that it
Right.
is more a female tendency to be more other focused. I mean, big surprise.
Yes.
Um, and even hard, even stronger with parents, right? There's even more, how are the
Absolutely.
kids, right? But men can absolutely do it too. It's by no means black and white. I tend to be more other focused as well. Well, it depends on the context. Anyway, so embodiment there is really a journey, or a big part of the journey is, wait a minute, let me actually learn to not fixate on you so much, but to reclaim my attention for myself, and then grounded in myself, extend my attention back to you. So it's like yes to me and then yes to you, rather than yes to you and then, well, we'll see about me and where I
Right.
fit in with that. And that's a hugely empowering shift that embodiment can
And
bring.
and and what that makes me also think is like if I am in a space with someone and I check in with myself and I'm really checking in, and I might notice like, oh, I don't feel safe, or I'm getting like, I don't like this person. Like I don't have a reason necessarily, but something in my body is saying caution, whatever that is. So I
Yeah.
wonder like if that being fully connected with how we experience things in our body, because I do believe that our bodies sometimes are more knowledgeable about what's happening in our world than our brains are. Sorry, my dog is going to apparently join us today. So how true is that that our bodies can inform us on how to keep us safe, like by paying attention to them.
Let me circle back on that in just one moment. I want to, if you don't mind, I want to talk about this self-to-other flow, and then let's hold that question in light of both of those. Otherwise, I'm not honoring the people that have the other,
right.
So those that are less comfortable really attuning to, like, being present with the others, right? That are more often, in terms of, for those that are listening, aware of attachment styles, these are more can be and include definitely the more avoidant attachment styles, as opposed to more anxious, like, are you okay, are we okay types. So those that are a little more closed off, or a little more introverted, just more self-centered, and I don't say that in a judgmental sense necessarily, but tend to orient more and find their motivation more intrinsically rather than extrinsically or in the other's well-being. For those types, it's often a journey of learning to find that safety in themselves, which is typically more available. Like, I feel safe when I'm not with you and I'm myself. Of very slowly extending their awareness and learning to feel safe and safe and safe as I include more and more of you and your full reality and emotional reality, moment to moment, in my sphere of embodied awareness. Meaning, can I stay in touch with myself and include more and more of your reality while still feeling safe, right? And the more easily I can do that, well, then the more naturally I'm going to want to connect, because it doesn't trigger me as much, and it doesn't cost me as much energy to be with you, to interact with you. Introverts will typically say, I can do it for about an hour or two, but then I gotta have some me time, right? Because I'm exhausted. Well, embodiment then is an opportunity. It can be, in different schools of embodiment, of course, focus on different things. I'm talking about the kind of work that I and certain other people do. Can be this amazing opportunity to repattern ourselves so that it does become more and more easeful to be with people for longer and a broader range of people for longer periods of time, and actually enjoy it and feel easeful in it. Whereas for the other people, the journey of safety is it safe for me to feel my own feelings while with you? Is it going to threaten the relationship? Am I going to lose you if I'm honest about myself? Right? Or because there's such a long history of negating one's own reality and one's emotions, it's hard to feel, let alone even imagine, like really staying grounded in your own truth. So embodiment is an amazing opportunity for other focused people to step more into their own authenticity, more into their own power, more into their own confidence, and not feel continually at the mercy of other people's agendas and feelings.
And I know that is something that I used to be guilty of, which was worrying about everyone else and putting myself absolutely last. And then by the end of the day, I'm exhausted. I've got none of my things taken care of. And I would even argue that there was a sense of like resentment because I was giving all of myself to everyone else.
Sure.
Never getting to focus on myself.
Yeah.
And so I know that for me, I have, and I'm not sure it's necessarily embodiment, but it's more of okay, how is helping this person going to help me today? And by that, it could be, well, it's not, or I'm going to feel really good after I help this person. So it's worth doing because it's going to shift how I feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it sounds like when you're aware of because I'm wondering now if instead of if you could take a step back in that decision making and think through okay, if I do whatever this thing is, how am I going to feel? And even in that moment, noticing what comes up in your body, is that part of this learning process?
Absolutely. I know we don't have a lot of time left, so maybe it'd be good for me to circle back to almost to the beginning for a few minutes and say, okay, so I had this laboratory. I started researching these vowel sounds. fast forward 20 years, and there's this
Right.
modality, UZAZU Embodied Intelligence. We've trained and taught thousands of people around the world in how to understand it's what it has become. Embodied intelligence is what is embodied intelligence, and why do I call it embodied intelligence? Intelligence can be defined as, leaving the embodiment out for a moment. Intelligence can be defined as an entity. It can be a living entity,
Right.
or an artificial intelligence. Capacity to make sense of a situation or data, yeah, to determine a desirable response or change, like, oh no, but let's change it this way, or a goal, in other words, some sort of a goal, because of
Right.
this, that, right? Or instead of this, that, and then to pursue effective action in service of that goal, right? So that's
Yeah.
intelligence in a nutshell, and that plays out in a million different ways, right?
Right.
Make sense of your environment. Could be internal and external, right? To have a clear sense of, or some degree of clarity about where to go or how to change it, and the ability to get there. That's intelligence in a nutshell. So embodied intelligence is going, well, this doesn't just happen in our mind, it happens in our whole being. How can we use more of our whole being and all of our embodied intelligence to make sense of, without getting dysregulated to a point where we can't respond, and we can't even keep taking in the signal. We have to shut it out because it freaks us out too much, be it our own emotions, be it what's going on in the world, be it gun violence, you name it.
Yeah. Right.
So to take it in, to hold it without being dysregulated, to shift our state such that we can act on it in a productive way, that we can do something productive in response to it. That is embodied intelligence in a nutshell. And so depending on what types, so the questions are, most people can take in certain types of stimulus, but not other types as well. We're talking about self versus other focused people. Some people are good at taking it, like you and I, we work in the as helping professionals.
Right.
We're comfortable with taking in other people's emotions and holding that.
But I'm not great at giving other people my emotions.
Right. And how to hold and manage your own emotions as you share them. That's a different flow. So many therapists, when they learn our work, are like, oh my God, I need this for myself first. I'm reasonably good with others, but I need this for myself. So there's the what kind of stimulus, what kind of input can we hold and process? And then what kind of a response and what range of responses am I capable of? Some people are really good at empathy. Some people are really good at analysis. Some people are really good at action. It's much more rare to find people that are comfortable doing that full range of things. So embodied intelligence is expanding our range of the different modes or ways in which we can sense, process, and respond, so that we can be receptive, empathic, assertive as required, moment to moment.
And I'm guessing that this is one of those things, not unlike meditation, where it takes some practice and some time to learn how to show up in your body and to experience all of those feelings fully.
It does. And at the same time, people, what we found, so to our surprise and delight over the years, is that when you align the form of the body with the focus of attention of the mind, together with breath, you stand a much better chance of holding these different types of stimulus and enacting these different types of responses in a way that feels safe and okay. Meaning, when you're just trying to do it with your mind, but your body's like not supporting it, it's way harder, right? It's like if I went like this, I have a silly analogy that I've never thought of before. It's like if I wanted to throw a pen, but I would only do it with the wrist, like it wouldn't really work well. But if I adopted the form that supported that,
right,
or it's like if I was trying to indicate to you where to find something in the room, but I could only use my nose. Like, no, that's not the most effective way to do it. That's silly, but here's a better example. If we want to tune our attention to ourselves and check in and land in our own body and reconnect with how am I really, I could do that this way, but it would be more of a mental trick. Oh, by the way, for those just listening, I'm extending my body outwards in an extroverted motion. And then to feel my feelings and feel my body is harder because my body's literally supporting my mind to go outwards. But if I hold that vowel, and move my body inwards, now all of a sudden it becomes way easier to rest my mind in this space that my body is holding for it. If I'm having trouble feeling you and connecting with your feelings in a way that feels safe, if I just do this, that might be like edgy, just, standing here looking at you. But if I take a step forward towards you, like literally move towards you, it's sort of supporting my mind to go like, hey, let's look at Amanda here, right? And if I then soften down and imagine receiving you, that helps a lot more for me to have the space to receive your stimulus, as opposed to if I'm here. Like, just notice what it's like to witness me receiving you. Hi, how you doing? How are you feeling?
Yeah, see, that feels very stiff and not like.
Yeah, but when I soften down while staying forward, all of a sudden my body is supporting my mind, and then the awareness can flow through that, and all of a sudden it feels much more doable.
So, as the person on the other side, when you lean in and down, it feels safe and like almost like you want to pull me in.
Right. So
like
it invites the other to participate in my action, and it signals clearly what my intention is. Like when you're in a session with somebody and if the therapist is like, so how are you feeling? And they lean back and they look at their notepad, right? And it's like, yeah, I'm not feeling safely empathized with right now.
Yeah, but if your therapist kind of, leans forward a little bit, and I'm not talking like out of their chair, bent over, just leans a little bit forward. It can be just a few inches. Right. And also that like relaxing of the shoulders.
Yeah.
It changes how you feel with a person. Because if someone's so stiff, you're like, okay, what's wrong with them? Are they going to break or explode? Or, right. I don't know what's happening with their emotions, if you will.
And right now we're talking about one specific thing, which is what we call bridging, which is, I'm here with you in a feeling mode, but there's, I'm expressing myself. if I'm going to express myself from here, it's a little distracting because I'm so busy with your feelings, right? But if I go into myself and I let that expand, okay, I'd like to share how, like what's really true for me right now. Like now my body's supporting that. Right. That might be very uncomfortable, but I can learn to breathe through that. And in a surprisingly quick amount of time, my body learns to find safety in that, because mind, body, and awareness are in alignment in that mode. They're supporting that. So the conditioning, the trauma, and that gets in a little bit more complicated discussion, but it processes itself through much more quickly and safely.
So since we've just got a minute or two left before, I think like ending with, because we kind of talked, like what's one thing that people could start doing to be more focused on that embodied intelligence?
One great question, self-reflection question, is where would it serve me to put my attention right now more? Is my attention too far out into the world, or is it too far stuck in myself? And first, move your body to where your attention naturally is so that you can reconnect it. Yeah. So if you're too far out in the world, literally move forward into that. Okay, this is where I am. Now my body is at least meeting my mind where it is. And then bring it back with you into yourself, or move into yourself and then very slowly bring the mind and the awareness with you out. Just like if your kid is playing out in the yard and you yell at them, come on in, and they don't. But if you go outside, look at them, breathe for a moment, and say, I really need you to come inside now. They come.
Right. So it's
the same with our body mind. Meet it where it's at and bring it to where you want it to go.
And so the key with that is to like becoming aware of where you're at and then where you want to be, which is going to take some practice. But I'm guessing too that like as humans, we know what feels good in our bodies on some level, maybe not fully and completely without practice. So it might just be like what feels good and authentic versus like how do I feel right now? And then what feels good and authentic, and finding that middle ground.
What is this feeling right now? Where does it want to shift to? If
Okay,
it
yeah.
shift at all, you might be feeling fine.
Right.
Where does it want to shift to, and how can my body support that? That would be the simplest way to frame it. UZAZU, if somebody's interested in UZAZU, we have ways to, get more specific and practical about that, obviously.
Right. And I know that you have a free assessment that people can find on your website.
You answer 72 questions, and it gives you a really good readout of where your attention and your energy and your state tend to be, the different places it tends to hang out, and how much balance or imbalance or dysregulation seems to be present in the course of a given day for you. And then we have follow-up practices and things, ways that you can
and additional trainings.
Yeah.
And if someone is interested in working with you and learning more, they can check you out on your website, right?
That's right.
DylanNewcomb.com.
Yeah, there's that. And then there's UZAZU.org. UZAZU is our website, UZAZU.org. And it's UZAZU because of those vowels. UZAZU, that we named it that contraction and expansion movement of these vowels.
That is awesome. And I'm going to make sure I have the links to all of these, in the show notes. And so people can find you. Thank you so much for talking with me. This is interesting, especially because I'm currently doing somatic embodiment training. So this feels like right aligned with that. Thank you again for being here and sharing a little bit about all of this mind and body and the movement. I'm just going to tell you that I know this isn't exactly the thing, but my kids and I have dance parties every Friday in our living room. And there's something about dancing and moving to songs that are fun, that connect you and release stress. And I don't know, it just feels good and goofy. And it's like a place to let go. And so I think just any movement sometimes shifts your whole being in that moment.
Indeed. Giving yourself permission to just move as you feel it is a great example of what we've been talking about.
So thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation. And to my audience, thank you so much for listening and learning more about how mental health and society meet. Now go out and open a conversation and discover how mental health is experienced in your world. You can find more of the Mental Society where you find your favorite podcasts or on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. You can find additional resources at our website, which is thementalsociety.com. And remember that you are not alone in your struggles, that hope and help are all around you. And until next time, this is Amanda Dolan, wishing you good health, mental and otherwise.